Okay, people, we are back with number 8 of Tucker's 10-point manifesto from his new political party that he hasn't given a name to. Now, we went through a lot, and I hope you're digesting these in small doses. That's why we're breaking up the entire session. Now, as we get on to the number 8 point of his undergird column manifesto of his new political party, it's going to be wise, wisdom. A country should be wise. A country and its citizens should have wisdom. So before Tucker gets into that, I want to give you the definition for what Tucker's going to try to convey that his new political party will and do. The word wise mostly means having or showing good sense, smart judgment, and deep knowledge gained from life experience. It can also mean being informed about a secret, acting bold or rude in slang, or serving as a suffix, meaning in the direction of, manner of. So I think what Tucker's talking about here is the wisdom part, the good judgment part. That's what I believe. I haven't heard it. Let Tucker break it down to us here. But here we go, Tucker. What is this point about wisdom?
And what would you want to do to your kids? Educate them? Obviously not. You'd want to make them wise. So wisdom is the goal. Living in a wise country is the goal. Now, how is it different from education? Well, education is what we have. Education is a credentialing system whereby some tax-exempt institution issues you a document showing that you have been, quote, educated. And lost in that process is any real check on whether you have an education, whether you know anything or understand anything of great value. And increasingly, with some exceptions, but increasingly, it is obvious to everybody that that system is completely broken. It turns out people without skills, without an understanding of how things work, and without the ability to make sensible decisions, otherwise known as wisdom. It just doesn't work. Now, this would be considered an emergency in a normal society, because, of course, the only way this continues is if you teach the next generation, pardon the banalities here, but it's too seldom said now, how things work.
Okay, I think he's got a point here. I think what he's talking about in layman's terms is discernment, is street smarts. It's the ability for the next generation to understand what happens, how things work, how people think, to understand their surroundings, to know their surroundings, to know their political and societal and even economic surroundings, to understand how we got here, to look out for signals and signs of what's going on that's still reminiscent of the past mistakes, or how to look ahead and navigate themselves through the difficult times of life that are independent and extraneous on your educational background. These things are up here. These things are what parents teach their children about how to be able to survive in America. That's what I think he's talking about. Do you see the difference between wisdom and education?
And not just how systems work, though that is very important, to teach kids a sense of physical reality. How do we get energy? What is energy? Where does it come from? You turn on the lights. What's the process that makes the bulb go on? How do you start a fire? How do you make food? Where does water come from? Nobody is taught any of these things. And instead they're outsourced to the specialty class, really a caste at this point, a mixture of working class white and Central American contractors who answer all those questions for you in English or otherwise. But the effect is that for most middle class and above Americans, there's no sense of how anything actually works. And that has implications over time because, like, if we're going to expand the size of the power grid, like, who's going to do that? Who understands electricity? People go to trade schools? Well, it's not enough. People need to understand the things around them, the physical reality that doesn't take place on a screen, but is rooted in unchanging fact, like the need for water, food, and electricity. So there's that. But the main thing you have to teach the next generation to understand are the things that don't change. And you know this because...
Now, you know what? That's true. But unfortunately, that's true. We have to be able, but in doing that, Tucker, and explaining to the next generation things that don't change, We must be honest in explaining the human condition of all of us and how we got here and what's the foundational principles of the things that don't seem to change. How to make them aware. Now, and then, you know, to be honest, Tucker, there is a difference. And I hate to say this, and I hope you will agree or maybe disagree. There is a difference in understanding from the point of view of a black American how things work in the street smarts of what their surroundings are to those of the Caucasian persuasion. Wisdom works in both ways, and wisdom is built upon different life experiences. Your wisdom of life may be different from mine, but I still need to be to understand where you're coming from so I can give that level of wisdom to my kids of what to look out for and what to look for. You follow?
Any attempt to follow some tech fad has proven hilariously and disastrously a failure. So there was a push 15 years ago when the tablet came out, the iPad, to get every kid has to have an iPad to learn on the iPad. And of course, the results came in within the decade, and they were totally predictable. The kids who spend too much on iPads are actually way dumber and less informed than those who read books. But none of the educrats who pushed that and demanded money to do it ever apologized or even acknowledged that it was wrong. Just like every educational fad, new math. I mean, this goes back 60 years. We're going to do it a totally different revolutionary way, and your kids, without really working hard, are going to learn a ton. And of course, every successive generation has become more and more ignorant, and the internet has accelerated that. So what's the antidote to that? How do you fix that? And if they're your kids, it really matters. Despite the fact that almost no one in authority in the Congress, for example, or the White House ever talks about education anymore, except as a matter of funding and who's going to control the funding. But the actual process of taking a child and making that child into an adult, guiding that child into a productive and happy life, like that's just, they've given up completely.
I don't know if they're giving up so much, Tucker, as much as, unfortunately, there used to be classes growing up where they did give you some rudimentary life skills of how to survive, what to do as a young adult, what to be as a young adult. But I think all too often the responsibility of that, of passing on that level of wisdom, should come from the parents. And in some cases, society has made it difficult to take the time away from parents as they're not home, they're latchkey kids are not there, and parents are out trying to make it and keep a roof over their head, that they don't have time for passing on that wise instruction that they got from their parents. And I think a lot of parents fail in this. There's a lot of things we look at our children and we say, you know what, how come you don't know that? Well, simply put, we didn't give them the discernment. We didn't give them the knowledge from our experiences. We didn't give them that honesty about societary issues and how to survive in the cold, cruel world, that when things run amiss, we look at them and we say, come on, you know better than that. But maybe they didn't, because we gave them education, but we didn't give them wisdom.
Because you can just import people to do those jobs. Or you don't need those jobs because AI or whatever. Or it's just too complicated. The things we tried didn't work. The assumptions we had were wrong, and they don't want to admit it. So basically, there's no effort to educate the next generation, except maybe in engineering or software.
You see, he's going back and forth. Even you started out, Tucker, by saying there is a difference between education and wisdom. Knowledge is one thing, wisdom is another. There's a difference, but the two must go together. And I believe in what you're saying. I believe that parents need to pass on that discernment, that wisdom to their children that is built on generation of life experience. Because if you go back 2 or 3 generations and you're bringing forth the wisdom that I got from my great-grandfather to my grandfather, from my father to me, I'm passing on 4 generations of wisdom, street smarts, understanding, knowledge of things, unfortunately, in our society that may not have changed and that may even be subtle to give the appearance that it's changed, but it's still evident. And we have to pass on to our children the knowledge about that. You see what I'm saying? And I have to say this, and I hope no one takes offense. A case in point to that is what happened with this young black man that went away with his friends, and they came back and he didn't. See, I think unfortunately, maybe, and again, maybe he was too trusting of the, and it's alleged because I don't know what happened, but he could have been too trusting of his surroundings and not having the wisdom or discernment to realize exactly where he fit in that group, if you know what I'm saying. And I'm not saying it in a bad way, but unfortunately, each generation and each culture needs to be wise of exactly what's happened before. And there has been examples of what's happening to that young man that's happened before. And that's the wisdom that we must take now and pass that on to our children so that same thing won't repeat itself again, unfortunately.
For coding. Oh, but wait, those are now irrelevant because of AI. So it just shows you the limits of trying to figure out what the next important thing is going to be. You're almost always wrong. In fact, it's hard to think of an example of Americans, say university administrators, getting the next important trend right. So it might be worth just returning to the eternal goal instead of acquiring ephemeral wisdom, knowledge rather, instead of trying to figure out how to code. It might be worth teaching your children about the things that don't change, like human nature.
Yeah, that's
human
what
nature
I totally agree. I totally agree. That's where we have to do it. But society has made it difficult for parents to have the time to download that in to their children. Unfortunately, because double parents are out trying to survive, both parents and children are more latchkey. Unfortunately, society, TV shows, sitcoms have been the one to give them a mixed wisdom, a blind wisdom, as if things that don't change don't exist anymore. And I must say that, again, it's different for each culture, but I really believe that there must be some time. Now, parents, we must double back. Even if our children are older, we must double back and give them that reality therapy in terms of what to discern, what to know, what to be aware of in their surroundings, who they are as young black men and women, who they are. And not to say that, oh, this is bad, but we have to let them know of their surroundings so they can be able to discern and test and know what is true and what is honest and what is fake and what is fraudulent.
Is unchanging. The behavior of people in, say, the Book of Chronicles, written 3,000 years ago, is totally recognizable to us. Hammurabi's Code, the first written law, addresses the way people behave on the basis of the way people still behave now.
Well, you know what, Tucker, in saying that, then we have to face, I go back to your first pillar, which is fairness. We have to face some of the ugly truths in our country. Some things that won't change in our country is racism. Some things that won't change in our country are prejudice. Some things that we won't be able to change is disparate treatment. Some things we won't be able to change is the economic disparity. And we need to be able to explain that and articulate it to our children. I'm thinking about the black culture. And from the same token, in all fairness, Tucker, you should be able to give that wisdom to your children, to give them a history of what hasn't changed. To let your children know, unfortunately, there are still people that are race baiters. There are still people that are white and disparage against other races. That you need to be able to explain that. So if both of our children have the same level of wisdom and understanding, they can meet, understanding one another, and then truth and acceptance and true friendship can come. But it can't come if both don't understand that there is a playing field that was never really even, and to some degree in America will never be even. We must explain that, Tucker. We must explain that.
Thousands of years later, which is another way of saying these, despite what they may have told you, are facts about people that have not changed in thousands of years, and even with Neuralink are unlikely to change in the future.
Absolutely. It's the human condition. It's the human condition. And again, it's generations of the way people were that was drilled into them that continue on. Hate is generational. Racism is generational. Prejudice is generational. These things have flowed through time. Now, these things have not gone away. And we must not be naive to believe they're gone away. We still must understand that a black man and a white man can go for the same job, and 9 out of 10 times, even though the content of the character and the intellect of the black person can still be a little bit more, he may not get that job, and if he does get that job, he's got to work twice as hard as his white counterpart. Now, that's the truth. It may sound ugly. It may sound that I'm using it as an excuse, but that's the wisdom that we as black Americans need to pass on to our kids. We need to pass on to it that everyone that say they're our friends isn't our friends. We need to tell them, oh, be surrounded. You're going to go away with 3 dudes. You need to be careful. Remember your place. Remember who you are so that you can protect yourself first before you depend on those in your group to protect you. Tucker, we have to be honest about the dirty business in America if we are to pass on that wisdom to your children and mine to make them successful as one.
And so why not explain them to children so that they can have the benefit of wisdom, so they can understand the world around them and make good decisions on the basis of what they see?
Absolutely.
Isn't that the whole point of the exercise?
Absolutely.
Well, because there's an entire lobby, well-funded lobby, 60 years old, designed to prevent any of us from telling the truth to kids about the way people are.
You know what it is? It's the world. It's the economy. It's the society. It's rich people that will work you like a dog, where 2 parents, a mother can't stay home. She can't afford to stay home. 2 parents have to work to give their children a decent life. So the mother is not home to impart. The father doesn't have time because he's working shift after shift to come home and give him that wisdom. Even the life experience that he's going through today needs to be imparted, even if it's harsh and even if sometimes it's degrading, to that child. On both sides, Tucker. On both sides, it needs to be done. The world makes it difficult for parents to really hone themselves and settle themselves and pour into their children like mine did for me, or like maybe yours did for you. This generation has been mistreated and has been shorted from that wisdom. I agree. We have to give it to them, no matter how harsh and how truthful and painful the conversation must be.
And don't want to be divisive and name it, but basically the entire education establishment, and it's one of the best funded establishments in America, exists to lie to kids, to your kids, to their students, about the way people are. And begins with the assumption that everybody is born a blank slate and that we're all the products of whatever inputs from our society or system.
Well, you know what, Tucker? You know why education right now was built that passed on a book of lies? Because unfortunately, this administration, more than any other administration, is trying to rewrite history. And you know that. They're getting rid of books that are complementary to the Afro-American experience. They're taking things out of museums that shows the history of America that will help parents impart that wisdom. Even on the Caucasian side, they're taking things out that somehow, from a Caucasian kid looking at a black child, realize, hey, what's your problem? You're just the same as me. Well, it's not the truth. But America, in this administration, this racist political prejudice administration, is doing its best to erase the true history of our country, so that it's impossible for the average teacher, even coming from the community, and to be able to impart their wisdom and that wisdom onto children in the educational field, because it's being stripped away from them. And they're not even allowed to discuss it anymore because we're removing the history books, Tucker. Read it right, Ref.
Enter our heads. And that's a freaking lie. And if you actually believe that, if you believe, for example, that men and women are identical and that they're just like called men or women because their parents decided to call them that 3 weeks after they were born based on their mood that day, if you really believe that, you will not have a successful marriage. You will not be successful in the workplace.
Well, you know what, Tucker? You're using men and women. But you know what? I'll take the same thing you said. If people are being raised to believe that black and white are really equal right now, that there's still not racial disparity, there's still not economic disparity, there's still not class disparity, there's still not education issues, we're still not doing those issues, we won't have a successful country. Because as long as we're lying to people and making it seem like that people don't need a leg up because of the systemic generational disparity that a race went through, we will never have a successful company. And that type of lie is a true danger to our democracy.
You will not be a happy person because that's not true. And if you spend your life at war with reality, at war with nature, you're not going to win because it's not up to you. So it might be worth reorienting the whole project around reality. And by the way, it's measurable. None of this is a mystery. We know the way that men are. We know the way that women are. Lots of studies have been done on this.
And we know the way about the other dirty deeds that you're not talking about. Racism exists. Prejudice exists. Okay? We have to be able to talk about those things and able to impart wisdom onto our children. People, Tucker is skating around as he's making it a man or woman thing, but we do. And I hope that you take from this conversation the ability to go back even, and you know what? There's nothing like having an adult conversation about these subjects right now for parents to be able to take the time, even if they're adults now, so they can understand that level of wisdom from your life experience. Don't waste it. You must impart. They must be able to survive.
Anyone who's lived in the world for more than 10 minutes can tell you. And we can debate whether the characterizations are right or wrong. But what we should never lie about, and what we should tell our children from day one, is that there are facts that we can't control. There are pre-existing facts about people and the world that we can't influence, and that you either roll with them or you don't. You accept them or you fight them.
Well, we got to explain it. We got to explain racism, Tucker. We got to explain racism.
You can't change them. That's the basis of wisdom. And there's no organized effort to do that at the primary, secondary, or college level. And there should be. Wisdom. We want wise leaders replaced by the next generation of wise children.
Okay. So we're going to pause right here, give you time to think about it, what Tucker's saying about needing wisdom. And I'm going to give, I know this was harsh, but I really believe that he's right. There needs to be some discernment. We need to be able to pass on discernment to our children. And I'm not making it a white or black thing. I'm making it an American thing. The only way things are going to change if people know what was right, what was done that was wrong. And that we need to be able to give them the conscience, to download in them our dream and our optimism, if you will, Tucker, that things can get better. To be able to say that you can be one day judged on the content of your character, not the color of your skin. And you could be judged to say that there are people out there that will give you a fair shake. We have to be able to explain the dirty business of America in order to clean up America. That's my point on Tucker's 8th manifesto in terms of wisdom. People, what do you think about wisdom? What do you think that we need to give our next generation? What do you need to pass on to your children and your grandchildren? Give that some thought as well.